It was supposed to be the crushing blow, Putin's final major offensive. The Kremlin moved specialized combined armies, mobilized elite tactical units, launched nearly 200 coordinated ground operations every single day. The goal was binary: break Ukraine's fortress belt and capture the entirety of Donetsk before summer. But something went horribly wrong. As April 2026 closed, Kyiv didn't just hold the line, they counterattacked. According to explosive new assessments released by the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, Ukraine has just recaptured a net area of 116 square kilometers. Think about that magnitude. A nation supposed to be in a total stalemate, retreating. This isn't an isolated failure. This is the first visible crack in a deep structural collapse of the Russian war machine. The cost of every single square kilometer gained by the Kremlin now means the complete liquidation of 2 to 3 entire battalions. Putin is trading his army for gray zones. Tonight, Geopolitics Decoded. US goes beyond the propaganda to expose the tactical mistakes, the technical failures, and the brutal reality of the spring offensive that broke Russia.
Welcome to Geopolitics Decoded US. We go beyond the headlines to reveal the hidden motives, the military maneuvers, and the massive power shifts defining our future.
From the halls of Washington to the frozen trenches of the front lines, we decode the strategies you aren't supposed to understand. Don't just watch history happen, understand why. Subscribe now and join our strategic community. The Red Spring that turned black. Vladimir Putin has long been obsessed with May victory parades, but the spring of 2026 was meant to be the ultimate triumph. His planners envisioned a massive, overwhelming push. They mobilized their most experienced specialized elements, the 5th Combined Army, along with units from the 29th and 36th Armies, and orchestrated a terrifying coordination along a massive front. The strategy was to create unsustainable pressure points everywhere simultaneously, forcing Ukrainian defense systems to overload. But April didn't give the Kremlin a victory, it gave them a paradox. When the ISW tallied the results, the picture was disastrous for Moscow. Ukrainian forces didn't just repel attacks, they executed precise, surgical counterthrusts that recaptured key territory. In total, a net 116 square kilometers were liberated from Russian occupation. The Kremlin had been claiming dominance in critical areas like Costantineka. Geolocated imagery now proves the exact opposite. Costantineka serves as the critical southern gateway to Sloviansk and Krematorsk. Russia knew that if this gateway falls, the entire urban alliance in the region would be under direct siege. Ukrainian forces are not only holding this gateway, they are forcing Russian units backward. As strategic analysts are now confirming, the spring phase has effectively failed. Russia is currently spending more resources to take isolated forested areas than they spent to capture entire cities a year ago. This isn't just a failure, it's stagnation. And to decode how Ukraine achieved this, we must look deeper into the silent digital warfare raging behind the lines. The tactical surge. Ukraine did not recapture these 116 kilometers by chance. Throughout April, the Ukrainian General Staff deployed a lethal three-step formula. First, long-range drones identified Russia's weak control points with surgical precision. Second, elite assault groups infiltrated these gaps under the cover of electronic silence. And finally, semi-autonomous robotic systems moved in to clear the trenches. This isn't just warfare, it's industrialized attrition. Putin's strategy relied on infiltration tactics, sending small groups into gray zones to plant a flag and claim control. But there was a fatal flaw. They established positions, but they never established real control. Putin believed he could reinforce these weak points over time. He was wrong. Ukraine didn't give him time. In the Kostantineka sector, the southern gateway to the Sloviansk-Krematorsk urban alliance, Ukrainian counterattacks have been relentless. Geolocated imagery now confirms that the very areas Russia claimed to own are now back under Ukrainian fire control. As defense analyst Denis Papovich puts it, the cost-benefit ratio for Russia is now horrific. They are gnawing at a bone that is breaking their teeth. Part 3. The Digital Guillotine. So, what is behind this sudden Russian stalemate? The answer isn't just on the ground, it's in the airwaves. In February 2026, the digital backbone of the Russian military snapped. The blocking of Starlink terminals in occupied territories created total chaos. Imagine this. Drone feeds went dark. Units couldn't talk to their neighbors. Navigation reverted to paper maps from the 1980s. This disruption alone directly contributed to the loss of hundreds of square kilometers. But it gets worse. The Kremlin's restrictions on Telegram, the very platform Russian officers used for horizontal communication, severed the last line of intelligence. Without stable communication, coordinating an offensive becomes impossible. Russia isn't just fighting the Ukrainian army, they are fighting a blind war. The digital blackout we just discussed is only the beginning, but the real cost of this conflict isn't just measured in fiber optic cables or satellite pings. It is being paid in something far more visceral, something that history books will remember as the meat grinder. Before we dive into the brutal reality of the mud trap and the personnel crisis bleeding the Kremlin dry, we have a question for our strategic community. If you were sitting in the Kremlin's war room today, seeing a net loss of 116 square kilometers after committing your elite units, what would be your next move? Would you double down on the offensive or pivot to a defensive stalemate? Decode your thoughts in the comments below. We read every insight, and your analysis helps shape our future deep dives. If you value this level of data-driven cinematic reporting, help us defeat the algorithm. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. By joining the Geopolitics Decoded US network, you're not just watching the news, you're understanding the board.
Welcome back
Now,
to
let's look at the
Geopolitics
Rasputitsa and the personnel crisis that is turning Putin's spring dream into a logistics nightmare. The mud trap and the blood price. Then, there is the Rasputitsa. The spring of 2026 was colder and wetter than anyone predicted. The ground turned into a death trap of thick, black mud. Russia's armored assault capability reduced to zero. And as the vehicles got stuck, the personnel crisis exploded. Recruitment rates have plummeted by 20%. Despite offering massive bonuses, reaching up to $50,000 in some regions, the Kremlin cannot replace the soldiers they are losing. The math is simple, and it is brutal. Casualties are outpacing recruitment. Russia is losing more men than it can buy. To hide this, the Kremlin is using cognitive warfare. They send small units into suicide missions just to create the perception of an advance for the state media. They are trading human lives for headlines. But the data from the ISW tells the real story, and that story is one of stagnation. The resource paradox and the Crimea dilemma. Behind the facade of a robust war economy, the cracks are widening into canyons.
At 7%.
The Kremlin is spending 7% of Russia's GDP on this conflict, levels not seen since the height of the Soviet Union. But money cannot buy what doesn't exist. Inflation is skyrocketing. Interest rates have breached 20%, and Russia is facing a labor shortage of nearly 5 million skilled workers. This leads us to the bonus inflation. To avoid a politically suicidal full mobilization, Putin is throwing money at the problem. In some regions, one-time sign-on bonuses have hit a staggering $50,000. For a soldier in the Russian provinces, that is a lifetime of wealth. For the Russian budget, it is a fiscal hemorrhage. But the crisis isn't just financial, it's geographic. The Kremlin is now trapped in a deadly resource dilemma. If they move assets to defend the Donbass, Crimea is left exposed. If they reinforce Crimea against Ukrainian long-range strikes, the Donbass front begins to crumble. Russia no longer has the luxury of defending both simultaneously. Inside Russia, the victory narrative is losing its grip. Military bloggers, once the Kremlin's loudest cheerleaders, are now leaking videos of failures, air defense inadequacies, and the sheer scale of the meat grinder at the front. The elite in Moscow are quiet, but they are anxious. May forecast: stagnation or collapse. So, what happens in May? As the Rasputitsa season ends and the ground dries, Russia will attempt to regain its mechanized mobility. But the question remains, with what resources? The ISW and our analysts point to the Geopolitics axis as the main focus for May. Russia aims to encircle Orikhiv and lay the groundwork for an assault on Zaporizhia. It is a high-stakes gamble. At the same time, the world must watch Costantineka. We expect Russia to attempt a full-scale urban battle here, repeating the infiltration tactics we saw in Pokrovsk. They will try to nibble away at the city, house by house, block by block. But Ukraine's robotic shield is ready. Robotic ground systems and interceptor drones, with a 95% success rate, are turning Russian infiltration zones into graveyards. As we look at the macro level, the truth is undeniable. Russia is now taking in a month what they used to take in a week. This isn't a breakthrough, this is stagnation. The ultimate question remains, is time running out for Putin? Ukraine is not just waiting. They are actively worsening Russia's hand, striking refineries, crippling communication, and bleeding their reserves dry. April 2026 was a turning point. For the first time since 2024, Russia suffered a net territorial loss. The spring offensive didn't just stall, it fractured. The victory plan remains on paper, but every day on the front line, that paper is being torn to shreds. The board is set, the pieces are moving. What we witnessed in April 2026 wasn't just a tactical shift. It was the moment the momentum officially stalled. But in the world of high-stakes geopolitics, silence is often the loudest warning. If you've made it this far, you are now part of an elite group of viewers who look beyond the noise. You don't just see a map, you see the strategy behind it. To ensure you stay ahead of the next major shift, subscribe to Geopolitics Decoded US right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss a briefing. The algorithm might hide the truth, but we will always bring it to light. In our next episode, we are moving our lens away from the Donbass to a region that is quietly becoming the next global flashpoint. While the world is distracted, a new alliance is forming that could change the NATO-Russia balance forever. You won't want to miss this one. And for those on the move, take our analyses with you. Find us on Spotify to make your commute a masterclass in global strategy. Keep your eyes on the horizon. The truth is often hidden in the gray zones, but we're here to decode it. I'm Marcus. This was Geopolitics Decoded US. Stand watch and stay sharp.